Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And today, my special guest is Aron Ra. Welcome, Aron.
How you do?
I think everybody knows you, but just in case there's somebody in the audience that doesn't, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am I'm a self-motivated activist, advocating for science education and for secular policies. And I've obviously been very, very busy and feeling like a complete failure of late. Yeah, because I've been overwhelmed by everything that I've been arguing against for the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mark Rothenberler says, "Who's this handsome gentleman?"
Yeah, that was a while ago.
And if anyone is not already subscribed to Aron Ra's channel, there is a link to the description in the description to Aron Ra's channel, and please go ahead and sub to him. But I imagine most people in my audience probably already are, and most people already know that you had a big hand in my deconversion. It was watching you at the ARC protest that was the straw that broke the camel's back that made me realize that God isn't real. Mostly because my entire faith was founded on the inerrancy of the Bible. And so one error in the Bible, blew the whole thing up. And you showed me that the flood just simply didn't happen.
I don't know if you've told me the story before. I feel like you have. But
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I didn't know that I needed to do that video series on disproving the flood, but I'm glad I did, because I've heard a lot of people tell me similar accounts, this or that hadn't occurred to them before. Because the series that we're talking about, one of them covers meteorology, or actually physics. Another one covers geology. Another one's more specifically paleontology, zoology, botany, and a number of different topics, including the last one that was included on the series is on shipwrights. So I started adding other things that were relevant, that were covering the same topics, and one of those is, I don't know if you knew that there was a handful of ships, like half a dozen of them at least, that have sunk in the last decade or so, that were specifically designed for carrying livestock. They are as big as Noah's Ark, comparably, right? They're right about the size, some bigger, some slightly smaller, but they're all carrying 14,000 sheep or whatever. And they have to have all of this ventilation and everything that they have to do in order to keep the sheep alive for 2 weeks. Just the ventilation alone, all these high-powered fans and everything. When you get all these sheep into the storage hold, the temperature soars, and there's no oxygen. So all these things, that when you watch these videos about how these ships carry livestock, you realize that Noah couldn't have possibly done any of this.
Yeah.
And then one of the problem is that half a dozen of these ships in the last decade or so experienced engine failure. Now, engine failure is not a problem Noah would have had, because it didn't have an engine to begin with. So the issue with that is that these ships, when they don't have an engine, they don't have a means of propulsion, and they don't have a means of steering, then when they get into rough seas, and the Noachian flood was supposed to be the roughest seas ever. These
now,
ships,
the Noachian flood, is that the big one in the Black Sea that was about 7,000 years ago?
No, I'm talking about the Noah's flood.
Okay,
the
gotcha.
Story of Noah's flood was supposed to be, we are told, like the worst calamitous waves ever, and so on. But when modern ships are carrying live cargo and all of this, and they are at rough seas, what they have to do is point the bow into the oncoming wave. Because if they don't, it'll capsize. So you have to have both the propulsion and the steering. Now, 6 of these ships were, in the last decade or so, capsized because they had engine failure. They can't go forward, which means that they can't steer. They can't point into the wave. So one wave turns the ship sideways. The next wave comes in and rolls it over, killing
Okay.
everyone and everything on board.
Did you see the movie The Perfect Storm?
Yes. Yes. It took me a minute to
They did the
remember that.
same thing in that. You can watch the captain trying to keep the boat upright by steering the ship straight into the wave. And as the ship goes straight up with the wave and it doesn't capsize. Yeah, I know what you mean from watching that movie.
Yeah. And then, but the thing is, when you have Noah's Ark situation, you realize that there's no engine, there's no means of steering. There's every wave is going to turn it broadside to the next wave. Everybody's going to roll over and die. That would have happened in the first day.
Mhm.
It wouldn't
Mhm.
have been 40 days and 40 nights. No, everybody's dead in the first day. And then the amount of ventilation. Why do you have to have, if you're going to have 14,000 sheep, why would you have to have, I think it's 14 massive turbines,
Mhm.
but it was like 2 rows of these huge fans.
Mhm. Mhm.
So why is that? Well, one is that there's no oxygen down there, and 2, they're overheating. So you wouldn't think about that, right? You would heat. And then let's just talk about fresh water. How much fresh water does one of these ships have to carry? So, I mean, ultimately, the Noah's Ark carrying all of this cargo, all of this livestock, one day would not make one day. The Bible gives dimensions for like the breathing holes.
Mhm.
No, everyone on board going to die of methane poisoning right
Yep.
away. You've got 6 hours of survival.
Yep.
Or a number of people have estimated that they would already start dying before the boat got loaded.
Serge says this would be logical, but when your answer to all things is something magic happened, problem
Yep.
solved.
Yep.
I always say, why didn't God just put a bubble around the boat, lift the boat off the earth, flood the earth, and then put the bubble back?
Why did he have to flood the earth?
Yeah.
His issue is with a handful of people in the Levant.
Mhm.
Why not just wiggle his nose, or fold his arms and blink, or do whatever these genie characters do, and
Mhm.
just, or hey, if you can't just eliminate those few people that are pissing you off, I don't understand what is the purpose of drowning every possum in South America, every doe in North America, every monkey in Asia, whatever. Why? Your problem was a handful, and the only reason you have a problem is because you haven't expressed yourself adequately.
Mhm.
Why not fucking show up like a dad?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and take a teaching moment. Explain the wisdom of what you need to these people. I don't know, because what we know actually happened was that there really was a flood of a local river area. Quite impressive. Killed a bunch of people. In the Euphrates, 2900 BCE. And we know that there was also inundations of the Black Sea and the Sea of Galilee. The Black Sea was like 8,000 years ago. The Sea of Galilee was like 15,000 years ago. There's been a bunch of floods like that where
Mhm.
dry land, people have houses, and suddenly all those houses are underwater. That's happened a bunch of times. But the Epic of Atrahasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and a number of others are all based on this one event,
Right.
2900 BCE, in the city of Shurapak. And the interesting thing about that is that how we know that they're all based on the same story. Global flood myths. I mean, there's lots of flood legends all over the world, but they're importantly different. Like Japan, by the way, doesn't have the flood myth because they have so many tsunamis and such that's not even a joking matter. Nobody wants to hear those stories. But there's one in Africa where the world was flooded with beer. And there's another one where the global flood was blood. And then there's another one where the only survivors of the floods were a man and a woman who hid in a seashell, and that the gods turned all the other animals into fish until the flood was over with. And then the man and the woman come back out of the seashell, and the gods turn all the fish back into mammals and reptiles and such. You're gonna have this is the kind of thing. It's just magic, right?
Mhm.
Isn't
Mhm.
that the way an intelligent, not just a superior being, but an intelligent being at all would not have done a global flood. The only reason we have a flood story is because there was a flood and people blamed gods.
Right. Right. Purple says, I have an answer for that. That being what another person in the chat brought up was, how did the animals get to where they were going after the ark? Based on the Jonah story, great whales could have acted as Ubers to get all the animals back to their continents.
Do you know what would happen to a whale's skin if he's carting around, a pair of koalas and kangaroos and wombats and so forth? And we're taking the excursion to Australia, and that whale, in order to support these terrestrial mammals, has to keep his skin above the water.
Oh no, they're
all the
inside of it.
way.
He swallowed them. Just like Jonah got swallowed by the whale.
Of course. And then Jonah is in there fishing with Geppetto.
Right. Getting digested with the digestive juices in the stomach.
Yeah.
But actually, the point that you made that hit me was when you said history, and the reason that connected the dots for me is I knew enough about ancient Chinese history to know that, there was this dynasty, and then there was this dynasty, and then there was this dynasty. I can't name them all in the correct order anymore. But there's no point at which they said, okay, and then there were no people at all for a few hundred years, and then a group of Babylonians came and restarted the civilization. No, there's a continuous history there. And I realized, oh my gosh, this doesn't fit with the archaeological record at all, does it?
I don't think my series included this.
No, but that's what you said in the arc. You said, we know this from biology, geology, history. And it was when you said all you had to say was the word history. And that connected the dots with what I already knew about history.
No, I was going to talk about something else.
I'm sorry.
I don't think that I included genetics is another, because I saw Alice Roberts did a series on human migration. And so they do genetic tests of all these people all over the Americas. And they're able to show these common, forget index. No, they're not. I'm trying to remember what it, but there's genetic markers in their DNA that shows an ancestry where they migrated from Asia down through the western part of North America, down into South America. Some of them, because there were some that independently arrived in the southern tip of, like oceanic Polynesians or whatever. So there was like 2 migrations that ended up in South America. But the thing is, they find an artifact. They find bones of a person that dates back. I don't remember what it was, 20,000 years ago, something like that. 13,000 years ago. I don't remember what the number was, but somewhere in that range. And they have DNA therein. And they match the DNA of this ancient artifact to the people that live there now. And it's a genetic match. That fossil person is directly related to the people who still live there.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing happens all over the world. Cheddar Man. The find of Cheddar Man from 9,000 years ago. This was before the flood, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the flood was supposed to be 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, something like that. So Cheddar Man it dates back to like 9,000 years. And they run a bunch of genetic tests on a bunch of people in the local area, and they find one guy that there's like a history teacher or whatever who still lives in Cheddar, and he's a direct descendant of this guy from 9,000 years ago.
Mm.
And I felt really petty when I heard that, because I'm like, okay, your family's been living there for 9,000 years. I lived nowhere near where I was born. But it's all over the world. You have the people who live there now match the fossils of people that lived there thousands upon thousands of years ago. So that shows. And then there's the genetic migrations as well that are indicated in other types of markers. So we know there can't have been a global flood. And I really don't think I did an episode on the genetics of the flood refutation. I probably should have.
That would make for a very good video. It would.
Thank you.
Okay, we have not even gotten to today's topic yet, and that is entirely my fault. But today's topic is the upcoming administration is going to be one that all of us are looking for ways to survive. And I'm wanting to offer hope to people of what can we do to survive what is coming in this next administration. Your thoughts?
Well, back in 2016, people told me that I should vote for the leopard eat your face party on the excuse that Trump can't really do all the terrible things he's threatening to do. That's not a reason to vote for somebody. Their incompetence or inability is not a reason to vote for them. Then in 2020, they said he'll be much more capable now, and we should still vote for him, even though he really can do some of this crap now. Now he's going to be unfettered, as well, not as much as he was the first time. And then in 2024, now the guy owns Congress and the Supreme Court, and he has all this backing with all these people who made plans, and now there's nothing to stop him. And we should vote for the leopard eat your face party because he can eat your face, but he won't. He can eat your face, and he wants to eat your face, but he won't. How do you know he won't? Hasn't yet. Well, yeah, he didn't have the opportunity yet. But if you elect him, you're gonna get your face eaten. Yeah, I really don't know what to expect. But again, I don't mean to seem. I know how this is going to sound, but I mean this was the worst election in American history. I'm afraid that it's going to be the most significant election we ever had, and I don't know if we're going to have another one. But if we can get back to having real elections, not Russian elections, which I think is where this is headed. Yeah, I don't see how we can get back and undo the damage, because we're talking about people who absolutely don't care about anything responsible. They don't care about, they don't believe in anthropogenic climate change. They don't believe in science at all. All they care about is harvesting everything in the Gulf, everything in all the forests, everything in all the rivers. Just harvest it all as fast as possible to make as much as we can before the next fiscal quarter, and reality doesn't exist beyond that.
Yeah. Sophie says,
I know people who have bought freezers and are stockpiling food. And I don't mean to be that paranoid. The only advantage that I have is that I'm old.
Yeah. That's what I think too, is it's going to take a lot to undo the damage that the next 4 years does, and I don't think I'm going to live long enough to see it.
That's if it's 4.
Yeah.
Because we already know that, Trump got the people where they need to be. And just as Trump no longer cares about the people who gave him the power over them, the people who needed Trump to put them in power, to give them that edge, they don't need Trump. So if he becomes too much of a burden, they will simply remove him and put in Vance or whoever else they want to put in. And somebody who's less insane, someone who is more cognizant, and this is just anybody with average intelligence, look like a genius compared to Trump. So whoever they put up is going to be worse.
One thing that I have taken hope in is that Congress did not kowtow to Trump and Musk over the shutting down the government. They did not shut down the government, and the plan that they proposed to keep the government open does not include the raise of the debt ceiling that Trump wanted.
Yeah. What's funny when people talk about, well, he's such a great businessman that he bankrupted every business he ever ran, and when he was elected president, he was in debt hundreds of millions of dollars to a whole bunch of foreign banks, which puts him in a very compromised position. Do you know that Trump made more money illegally from China as president than he would have as president? I mean, you only get, what was it, 450,000?
It's only 200,000. Yeah, the
But he
salary
made
for the president is
millions.
much.
He made millions from China, and we don't even know how much he got from Russia, or from the Saudis, or from Turkey. Actually, I think the figures are known for Turkey, but I don't remember where they are. So he's taking all this money from foreign powers, from dictators. And he's had secret meetings, because that's what kind of government we want. We want somebody where our leader not only meets secretly with dictators, but also make sure that there are no recording devices, there's no translators, there's no record of it at all. And then that our leader should bow to whatever the dictator wants, so that we end up with, and then follow their lead. So Vladimir Putin was president for 2 terms, and then became prime minister, and then became president again for 2 more terms, because you can only do 2 consecutive terms in the Russian Federation. So he did his president, now prime minister, then his president again. So in the end of his 2nd term, he changed the Constitution all by himself. He changed the Constitution, granting the prime minister more power, because he's about to become prime minister again. Except that when he did that, the entire Russian Federation government resigned on one day. And Putin simply replaced them all with loyalists, which is what Trump is doing. Schedule F. Fire everybody in the bureaucracy, replace them all with loyalists. Russian government.
Yeah, that's scary. And I do think Trump wants to get rid of our Constitution.
Yep, he said so.
I don't think he can succeed.
Yeah.
I think it is too difficult.
He has doggedly tried to undermine or overturn every single provision of the First Amendment when he was president the first time.
Okay, we have a really good question or comment in the chat. Dan D says, "Hi Kelly, I'm retired and worry about my Medicare and Social Security as they seem to want me to die sooner."
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that Musk and Trump do want to go after Medicare and Social Security.
Yep.
I don't think, though, that they can take away what people already have. I think
Trump said he's not going to take away what was it Trump? I don't remember who was it that said it. They weren't going to take away what you already have. And I think that was Trump that said that. But I am not taking Trump at his word.
No, I agree. But I'm not sure that they can take it back once you've already invested with benefits.
Oh, sure they can. I mean, don't you remember what was it, 1988, when Wells Fargo collapsed, and people just lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. They just went without. There was no insurance on it. Their fortunes lost. Too bad. Gone. You remember that?
I do, but that's different because that's private sector. You know, the government paid the insurance from the FDIC on any insured deposits.
They want to close Social Security so that they can, because they think that it's taking away, or it's adding to the national debt, or it's taking away from how much the country earns, so that they could put it into other things. So the excuse is that if they cut funding on Social Security, then they can pay for other things. But Social Security is completely independent,
right,
of everything else. And that's what they're not telling you. They just want to take your fucking money because they misspent everything else.
Jesus Tales says Trump said he is not cutting Social Security. That means not adding money to keep it solvent, not adding to keep up with inflation is another possibility within the bounds of not taking away from Social Security.
Yep.
If he does do away with Social Security, though, he would have to do away with the Social Security tax that everyone's paying.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Medicare and Medicaid will all go away with that as a package. Because all of it is communist, you know.
Right.
Yeah. If you're rich, everything's fine. If you're not, fuck you.
Right. Exactly. Let's see. So, what do we do? How do we fight?
Well, I can't give too many strong predictions. I mean, we know what he said he's going to do. And we know the only hope that I see that we have is that he's failed most of the things he said he was going to do.
Okay.
Everything he promised, he usually fucks up. So, but I can't guarantee that the competence of one man is going to save us. In the previous term, it might have, because we didn't have a lot of strong advisors or whatever. But we've got the Heritage Foundation and a bunch of other people who, not terribly intelligent, but smarter than Trump. And so they do have coordinated plans. And I'm sorry to say that there ain't a whole lot of Democrats who are smart enough to fight back. We have this thing in the Constitution that said that if you cannot be a president if you engaged in insurrection, how the fuck is he going to be president? It's in the Constitution, clear as day. You can't be in there.
Yep.
Why are we?
That was the whole point of the January 6th Commission, was they were supposed to end up with the conclusion that he had led an insurrection and get that declared in public so that he could not be president again. But they never got there.
Yep. So there we go. Not just the country, not just the Constitution, but because of their attacks on the environment and so forth, the planet, the species.
There was a tweet by Matt Walsh that I found particularly concerning, which was that he was showing a demographic that the vast majority of people who voted for Trump were uneducated. And his conclusion from that was, it is better not to be educated. And that worries me, that there's going to be a big anti-education push.
Yep. Well, there's not going to be a Department of Education to worry about.
There's not going to be Department of Education. Yep.
We are going to be the stupidest country on the planet. So
Uh,
the way that they used to teach us in school about what a third world country is, not saying that we're using the same kind of criteria anymore, but what we were told to expect, what is a third world country, that's what the United States will be, where there's a clear division between the haves and the have-nots. There's no the thing that made America a nice place to live was we had this robust middle class. We had natural resources. We had a strong safety net. I looked at the United States and I realized that if you go back 100, well, I did this a few years ago, so let's say 110, 120 years ago, if we go back to, say, 1910, something like that, the United States sucked ass to live in. There were no weekends off. There were no 8-hour days. There was no workers' comp. There's no insurance. There's no compulsory schooling. No housing regulations. No food regulations. No. There's no governance over the water quality. So you could poison yourself any day off of anything, and nobody's going to be liable or responsible. Nobody's even looking into that. You can have 35 people living in a one-bedroom apartment. That kind of thing went on all the time. You can have 6-year-old children working in factories barefoot for 12 hours a day. And as long as you work, you get paid. But then as long as you don't work, you don't get paid. And there's no provision for time off, for sick time, for any of that. There's no insurance, none of that. So the United States used to be a terrible place to live 110 years ago. And that is what Trump is talking about when he says he wants to make America great again. He wants to take us back to the worst the United States ever was. Eliminate all of eliminate the FDA, no Food and Drug Administration, no protections on our food quality, no protections on our housing quality, none of that. All regulations, all restrictions, everything gone. One of the first things he did was to eliminate 100 environmental restrictions so that industries could freely pour toxic waste into public water supplies. We're talking about people that are based entirely on madness and greed.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dan D, for the super chat. It seems to be pouring right now. Yeah, I'm not. I would definitely agree with you there. In that case, I think the answer that what we really need right now are writers. Because one of the things that really helped to solve that problem were some of the books that came out exposing just how bad the problems were. And I'm thinking particularly about the Jungle by Sinclair Lewis. We need another Sinclair Lewis.
Yeah, well, I'm doing everything I can. I don't know what else I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel, having been fighting against the religious right for so long, since at least Y2K. You know, I mean, I was in it slightly before that. I mean, I consider myself an activist before that by a couple of years, but we've been trying to stave this off, and yes, we have improved the number of people who understand evolution. We have increased the number of people who are no longer believers. There's a whole lot of people besides myself that started cropping up on the internet and started into this massive movement of a bunch of independently minded people, so that we went from 5% atheists in this country to more atheists than Jews. Then a few years later, there were more atheists than Catholics, which is pretty impressive.
Wow.
And then within the last few years, within the last 3-4 years, there were more unbelieving infidels than Protestants. So we are all, depends on how you ask the question, but unbelievers account for roughly a third of the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that they understand anything about science. Doesn't mean they understand anything about history or logic. There's still a perilous few, or philosophy, you know, that have any strength in the argument. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't believe, but not all of them are unbelievers for good reasons, and most of them can't actually defend their position as well as I would like them to, and as well as they're going to have to, before they just get reabsorbed into the mind mass of minions.
We have a super chat from Mr. Glumbilier who says, I think you need to apply the same skepticism to politics that you do to religion.
Well, I think I already do.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm so irritated about all these idiots who come up and say, you're wrong about politics. Okay, about what?
Yeah.
You know, and they don't seem to understand a fucking thing. It's so irritating.
I'm not sure that whether he was saying that we don't, or if he was saying that the rest of the public needs to do that. I'm not sure.
Well, what I've been hearing all day, because I released a political video last night, and so all I hear is that comment. You know, why don't you apply the same skepticism to politics? I do. Why don't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know? So, I mean, they tell me that I'm lying about the shit that I say. Okay. Quote me verbatim. Anything I said in this entire presentation that you can show to be false. Not just the next step where you show that I knew that it was false and you know, misrepresented it anyway. No, let's you're never going to get to step 2 because you're never going to get to step 1. Show that what I said was false first. But the The problem is the people who don't agree with me politically are wrong, demonstrably. I mean, I'm kind of a professional political activist. I have to know what's going on. I don't get to watch movies and TV shows and play couples tennis and do all of these social things that everybody else do. I don't have time. I have to be following all the news commentary from everywhere, which is irritating. I honestly, I took a break from it after the election because I was just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I was overwhelmed by, honestly, a loss of confidence in humanity. You're voting for somebody that you know is lying to you. You're voting for somebody that you know is incompetent. You're voting for somebody who you know is just trying to fuck you over. How the fuck did you elect him? Don't tell me, well, Kamala's not perfect. I know, but that doesn't mean you go for the guy who's going to kill you and your family. I mean, let's be realistic. The guy who actively wants to destroy the entire government, wants to destroy the Constitution, wants to destroy the economy. Even Elon Musk said that. He was talking about how he and Trump are going to crash the economy. And then because they're billionaires, they're going to sweep in and take out whatever stock items have crashed. They're going to be able to buy it up. They're going to make themselves even richer so that we will have even fewer, even richer people. Fewer rich, but richer, the fewer that's left. Everybody else is fucked.
Yeah.
You elected somebody who does not care about you, about the country, about the environment, about science, about anything. It's like when Trump put Betsy DeVos in charge of the Department of Education last time around. Somebody with no education herself, a billionaire who only made a public statement that she wanted to destroy the Department of Education, so he put her in charge. And then Rick Perry, my Texas governor at the time, when he said that he wanted to destroy the Department of Energy, so Trump put him in charge of the Department of Energy. It's doing the same thing. He's got a bunch of billionaires that he assigned all these billionaires to head departments that they had already said that they wanted to destroy.
This comment I've been holding for a while that I really think we need to talk about, and it's from Randall, Harmonica Man, who says, being a disabled person, it's about bare survival as it is. It's like life is an exercise in futility. My hope is now lost, and that doesn't help my suicidal brain. And this is exactly the kind of thing I was wanting to address here, is that I know things look hopeless right now, and I know things look bleak right now, but I don't think that suicide is the answer. I think we can get to a better place if we hang on.
Yeah. Besides, you don't have to kill yourself. Let them do it. I'm not feeling real good. Like I said, I've lost my faith in humanity. I'm deeply bothered that when I've tried to connect with the people in my own family about trying to teach them anything about this, when they tell me all these things that I know are factually false, I can prove it in a moment. And when I say when they say you're lying, no, I can prove that what I'm saying is true. We can look it up in a moment. Just take a second, check this on multiple sources. All these fact-checking sources and everything. We can just Google this in an instant. I can take you right to the company headlines, all of that. We can show that this is really happening. No, they don't want to know that. They want to believe in a lie. They want to believe in what they seem to know is a lie. And I get fingers plugged in ears.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I have a family member that when I brought something up, I don't even remember what it was or what I said, but the response I got was, well, I believe it. It doesn't matter. I believe it.
Yeah. My mother said this actual sentence to me. This is something she really said many years ago when I was trying to talk to her about evolution. And she said, I believe what I believe because that's what I believe. I believe that. And I'm not going to believe what you believe because it's not what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
How do you argue with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Or the one that I always heard,
comment.
the one I always heard was, I believe it. God said it. I believe it. That settles it.
Yep. I always hated that slogan. Yeah. I want to see something else here. We got Mr. Grumbler offers $2 Canadian and says, you think the Democrats care? I know the Republicans don't. Do all Democrats care? I don't know. Some of them do.
Bernie Sanders sure does.
Yeah. No, he's technically not a Democrat.
Yeah.
You know, because some of us are forced into a situation where you have to run for office as Democrat, you have to vote as Democrat because, like here in Texas, you can't be an independent. You're not if you want anything to count, not if you actually want to win or anything. You have to be one of the two major parties, which is why I strongly advocate for ranked choice voting. But on the question of do Democrats care? Yeah, everybody that I know in politics that does care is a Democrat.
I wanted to address this from Star Song, who says, I tried to off myself once and I'm still paying the medical bills from that. And
Wow.
MAGA isn't helping at all.
Yeah, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've never contemplated suicide. I mean, it doesn't. However bleak things are, I can still experience life another way. I mean, I used to think that I could just step out on the highway and stick my thumb out, and get a new life experience.
I battled suicidal thoughts continuously for about, 15 years. But that was in my believer days. That was never as an atheist.
Yeah.
Evelyn Terry says, 15 years enlisted in the Navy, and now my continued service is in question just because I'm trans.
Yep.
We'll be fighting back on this front as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And there's another thing I don't understand. Why the Republican Party is so very different than it was when I was born. The Democrats,
Yeah.
when I was born, and I know this is the same for you too. I don't know how rich your memory is on the history of this, but when you and I were children, the marriage that I currently have was illegal because I married to somebody who's half Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it amazing that in my lifetime that was illegal?
I didn't realize it was ever. I thought it was only Black people that it was illegal to marry.
No, you couldn't be non-white.
Non-white.
However, they define what non-white is.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 1962, they hadn't considered Asians as being Americans at all, right? Which my wife will tell you all the time that no, they don't. They, that people still expect her to be able to speak Vietnamese or whatever, or that she can't speak English. Even though she's lived literally her entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So, but back then, the reason that an interracial marriage was illegal was because of Democrats. The Democrats were the racists then. And there's a lot of people that said, there was a whole lot of people in the Democratic Party 100 years ago who were in the KKK. And that's true.
Mm-hmm.
The Klan, between the Republicans and the Democrats, the Klan was mostly Democrat or all Democrat 100 years ago. And so people like Ted Cruz would say, oh, yeah, the Democratic Party was the Klan or was the party of the KKK. Yeah, a century ago. And every Klansman is a Republican now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But of course, I won't tell you that part. Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the other comments that was coming up. So, did you have another one to read?
No,
I don't see one. Okay.
Here's one. It won't pop up. I'm hitting the button. Oh, I know what it is. I heard a ding and something has disconnected there. I think it's reconnected now. There we go. It was mostly Southern Democrats. Yeah, one other point I wanted to make, though, was one comment that I have heard repeatedly in the last, probably just 6 months, just as this election was coming up, is repeal the 19th Amendment. And yeah, the big push by the conservatives to try to get the vote away from women. And I don't fear that that's going to happen, because to do that is takes an astronomical amount of work.
Well, that's why I
How
said if they succeed, because think about
Right.
everything that they're talking about doing. They're also outlandish. I mean, there's some Republicans have talked about reinstating or repealing, what is it, the 13th Amendment? They want to bring back slavery in some capacity. And then I've seen Republican pundits that have talked about, said we don't think women should have the vote, so they want to repeal the 19th Amendment. Or I hope I get the number of the amendments correct, but they're talking about doing all of these outrageous things, and you have to wonder, could they succeed? Because I'm thinking, how the fuck did we elect Trump to begin with? How can you say, oh, no, the people would never do something that stupid? We did. We totally did. We elected a man who lies every day of his life, tens of thousands of lies while president, convicted fraud over and over again. The children's charity, the Trump University, and for his tax records and all. How many times can this guy commit fraud over the course of his lifetime? And you believe him? Well, why not? You believe the faith healers too, don't you?
Yeah. Mark says Republicans also want to repeal whatever amendment allows voters to elect senators to go back to state legislators to pick senators. Most state legislators are run legislatures are run by Republicans.
Yep.
I know that my state legislature, I think there are only 4 people in the entire legislature that are not white men.
Yeah, if I can just address that for a moment, because they don't want to teach history, because they think that teaching history, if they teach that slavery was the reason for the Civil War, then that makes white people ashamed. They think that if you teach how there was the civil rights thing, that the black people having to use a different sink or bathroom or whatever, that'll make white people ashamed of being white. I'm white. I learned about that shit, and it didn't make me feel ashamed, because being white doesn't mean that I have to be racist. Being white and living in this decade doesn't mean that I have to be what many people were back decades ago. I doubt very much if I was raised in that environment whether I would be like they were then. Why would it make me ashamed to know that I'm on the right side of history now?
Right, exactly.
So the only reason that I think these people who want, and they want to pretend that if you teach that slavery was the reason for the Civil War, which is correct, and if you want to teach the issues that were going on in the civil rights movement, they call that critical race theory. It's not critical race theory. It's accurate fucking history. Critical race theory is something different. But the only way that you could be upset about having kids learn history correctly is if you are still on that wrong side of history now. And you want to defend being on the wrong side of history. So you don't want racism taught as if it was a negative. You don't want racism taught as if it ever existed, so that the students of today won't be prepared for it at all.
This is a good comment from To Haydent. It's because the Democratic Party isn't for the people any longer.
Except that the Democratic Party is the only ones that are for the people.
They are, but
again,
the problem is that they're not resonating with most of the people. When they looked at the demographics after the election of who voted Democrat, it was mostly the well-educated and elite. It was very few in the working class, which means even though the Democratic Party wants to be the champion of the working class, they're not resonating with the working class. They've got to find a new approach to be able to reach the working class.
Well, I'll grant that they're not communicating this very well.
Mhm.
Absolutely all of the programs that would benefit the working class were coming from the Democratic Party.
Yes. Yes.
Just straight out. The Republicans were offering nothing for working class people. They want you to carry the tax burden. They want the corporations and the super rich to not have to pay taxes at all, but they want to take away all of the programs that made life a little bit easier for you and have you work harder, longer, and have your children work later hours and all of that as well. Every program that matters to the working class was coming from the Democrats exclusively, and that's it, and that's all.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't explaining that very well. The Democrats, what big problem that they had was that they're not understanding that they're going against people who do not play by the rules at all. So they had to be a little bit more abrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Like in that debate with Kamala and Trump,
Mm-hmm.
when they asked, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" Had I been on the stage, my answer would have been, "Well, 4 years ago, I can buy toilet paper now." 4 years ago, we were using refrigerated meat trucks because we had to use them as mobile morgues because the president fucked up the pandemic so bad. And then prior to the pandemic, he was coasting along in Obama's economy pretty well for a
Mm-hmm.
bit, but then things
Mm-hmm.
were starting to slow down already because Trump doesn't know anything about it. Yeah, he was given millions and millions of dollars and went bankrupt 6 times and keeps borrowing from other banks, foreign banks, so that he borrows his way out of debt. That's the guy we elected. And now he's deep in debt to Russia.
Yeah.
Russia owns him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's doing exactly what Putin says.
Yep.
So as far as the working class, let's see, Kamala was offering a $6,000 child tax credit. She was offering $50,000 for home buyers,
Mm-hmm.
a tax credit on that. And then there was another one that was for starting small, but was it no, getting a house would involve another $25,000 credit. So there's a whole lot of things that she had in her policy, which we never heard about.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I get that. Whereas
She didn't
Trump
promote the policy well enough.
just lied about said he was going to do things he couldn't do, like lower prices, and then admits that he can't.
Mm-hmm.
After he gets elected, he admits that he can't.
Yep.
And then he said that he was not going to do the Project 2025. He assured everybody, vote for me, I won't do Project 2025. As soon as he gets elected, yeah, I'm going to do Project 20. That was what I was always going to do in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's where we are. So the Democrats were the party of the working class, but nobody knew it.
Star Song says, in the days of the Civil War, my family history says we ran a safe house on the Underground Railroad. And Purple says, some people are worried because it's one thing to teach that blacks got lynched. It's another thing for your kids to learn that grandpa bought the rope.
I come from a very racist family. And so, I mean, there are people in my family who are KKK adjacent that were in
Mhm.
like one guy that I'm thinking of that was not in the KKK himself, but he was in a sister organization to them. And I heard the N-word daily throughout my childhood, which is why I don't use it now. That was why I never used it. I got tired. I couldn't stand listening to that word every day. And the weird generalizations to it. This is my family. And this includes people that I liked. This included people that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter that Grandpa bought the rope. Grandpa did a lot of stupid shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have to endorse Grandpa. I am not Grandpa.
I saw a movie that I got from my library. It's a very obscure movie, and I checked it out because it was the first movie starring Tommy Lee Jones, and he was about 14.
Oh my word. How old is that film?
Very old, obviously. It was a short. It's only about a 30-minute movie, and it's about his family, and his father is extremely racist. And at the end of the movie, he decides to ditch his family and go off on his own. And it's he just got so fed up with his family that he decided he's better off living on his own.
Kristofferson, who died this year, I think it was. Much the same thing. His family were, I think they were deeply religious and deeply racist and very militaristic. And he was in the military himself, respectably, and he went to West Point, I think it was, and all of that. But at some point, he decided that he was going to break from them and get a career as a songwriter. Of course, it's Kris Kristofferson. He obviously succeeded, but they disowned him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they didn't begin reconciliation until decades later, after he had been one of the most famous songwriter in history. One of the most. He wrote Me and Bobby McGee, for example. So he wrote songs for Johnny Cash.
Wow.
Yeah.
We are almost out of time. Are there any parting thoughts that you would like to leave with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is I stray away from labels because I find that it doesn't help if I use a label even correctly, because nobody knows what the correct definition is. And they don't want to know what the policies are. They just want to know what box to put me in. And then they can make all these generalizations about positions I do not hold and the positions I don't have because of what they're thinking that people of this classification are supposed to be like. So I avoid the labels, and I won't identify as Democrat being one of those labels. It's not about whether you're Democrat or Republican. You know, I have a surprising amount of respect for Arnold Schwarzenegger, Republican. He's an atheist, by the way. And
I didn't know that.
He's said some things that were very humanitarian. He's said some things recently in the last year or two. Arnold Schwarzenegger has said a bunch of stuff that I totally resonate with. He's Republican. That fact, being Republican doesn't mean that you're stupid. It's just the really stupid like to be Republicans now. And it wasn't always that way. When I was a kid, when I was born in 1962, if I was an adult in 1962, I would have been a proud Republican then, which was a point I was starting to make earlier. And then the Democratic Party and the Republican Party started switching places on a lot of things. So everything is in motion. The Republicans might correct themselves, or they may go extinct. Democrats might grow a pair or die out. Doesn't really matter to me. I'm not about the labels. I'm about the policies. And I don't believe in any people either, although Bernie was a pretty impressive guy.
Still is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a phenomenon. I'm really, well, I'm not even going to talk about, I don't need to get back to where my head was in 2016.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing some of your thoughts. It's been a pleasure conversing with you.
Thank you kindly.
And next week, my guest will be Christian idealism. I'm going to have a theist on for next week's show. And everyone in the chat, thank you for your comments and questions. You've added a great deal to the conversation. And Aron, thank you so much for coming. And live your life.